In 2015, I was the only video journalist on this press trip. Everyone else was a writer. They needed notebooks. I needed visuals, B-roll, stand-ups, interviews. They got to sit and soak up the scenes of the trip. I had to scramble and capture all that I could in that same moment. Same itinerary, completely different jobs. Let me tell you what this is like. Hi friends, we're rewatching my very first travel show I self-produced from start to finish 10 years ago. I had a distribution deal to put it on Amazon Prime Video and never put it here on YouTube. So that's what we're doing now. Welcome to the rewatch. Okay, so let's talk about it. It's the stress and anxiety I've always felt on press trips as a video content creator. Generally, press trips, especially in 2015, were built for travel writers. And that was just a fact. The pace assumed that you needed maybe 20, 30 minutes per stop to take some notes, observe, ask a few questions, and then move on. And if you needed more information when you went home and started to write your story, you could always call or email them. Well, that's not how it worked for me. I was on the scene then and had to capture everything then. I also had to place myself there too. My strategy was always different from the travel writers. Okay, so here's how I generally operated. Ahead of the trips, I would review the itinerary, but I did this strategically. I didn't want to know everything about the place or what I would learn in advance. The fun of discovery was actually going to the place and listening to the presentations from the guides and the hosts. What I would look for in the itinerary was trying to predict what B-roll I needed to capture when I was there. If I could bring my drone, what other gear I needed to capture aerials or on the ground. If it was a kayaking trip, do I need my sports camera or was it slower? Could I bring the big DSLR like on cruises? Or was this going to be something for my standard workhorse, that Canon G7X? That's all the work just ahead of the trip. But once on the trip, this is something I don't think other creators disclose. It felt like chronic anxiety. From stop to stop, I needed to make sure that I could capture everything I could in the time allotted because I couldn't ask the group to wait for me. I also didn't want to be one of those annoying influencer types, even though I never ever consider myself an influencer. But you best believe in 2015, traditional journalists had already pitted themselves against influencers and looked a bit down upon them. Like they really weren't true media types. So running and gunning, that was the name of the game, and trying to not slow the trip down. Now, it's important to note that other journalists weren't being inconsiderate. They just had a different job, and the press trips were built around that particular pace. In fact, most of those travel writers had never been on a trip with a video creator before. Most press trip hosts had never hosted a video creator with other travel writers. And the reason why I would be included was because at this time, destinations only had two versions of fam trips, one for those travel advisors and one for travel media. The influencer creator trip hadn't yet been put in action quite yet. Now, of course, today, every press trip has journalists working various roles, shooting content, taking photos, and also tasked to write. That's a whole nother discussion of what all the travel writers are tasked to do for their little bit of money that they are making these days. But that's due to a total change of the industry and what's required of them. And that's today's version of the press trip. There are also, of course, dedicated creator trips where the expectation is for everyone to capture content. And it's quite amusing to be on those. Very fun. Lots of big personalities, especially when at meal times and everybody pulls out their top light for their camera. Everybody knows the rules. You must wait at least 2 minutes for everybody to capture their photos before you can eat. No one even dares to stick their hand in the food before everybody has properly captured their images. And tourism boards now build itineraries with video creators in mind. I guess, come to think about it, I was one of the people who walked into that gap early on. Now, I do want to share how I adapted and managed this. My strategy, which I still use today, is to prioritize the shots and what is needed. So back then I would create a list on my Apple Notes, and this is, by the way, where I took my actual notes to write stories. And this list looked like this. In fact, I'm going to show you. Listen to the main talking points by the host and guide for a little bit, then go and get B-roll to establish the scene using the wide, medium, tight strategy and format. If you want more information on that, maybe I'll make a video about it. Just let me know. Then the next priority is to place myself in the scene. That would be setting up the tripod, then walking through the scene or some sort of interaction with that scene. And then next I would record a quick stand-up. That's the piece to the camera. That's me speaking directly to the audience. Now, I've explained in previous videos my strategy. I would listen to key points of the guides and something interesting they would say, and then I would run off and say it to the camera. This kept it loose, organic, less newsy, but more useful. And I found that once I got into the flow of recording stand-ups this way, it made for good transitional pieces when I was editing everything together. Then finally, if I still had time, I'd take still photos of myself for social media or other things, but if I never got around to that, I would use a screenshot from the video that I've taken of me just roaming around. Not ideal, but this was the shooting priority. And then if I still had extra time, I would sit back and relax and take some lifestyle photos of the scene, maybe a little bit of artistic framing, and letting my creativity kind of just be released instead of the anxiety of this checklist. So for those creators watching, I would love to know how you manage everything you need to capture when you are on a press trip. How do you plan for the itineraries? Okay, now let's watch the 2 episodes from the Florida Keys and let's see if you can pick up some of the ways that I'm actually trying to keep up. Okay, so I'm on my way now to the southernmost point in the continental USA.
The Florida Keys. It's a 120-mile string of tropical islands surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay guys, you know I always say the best way to get acquainted with a place is to take a tour. You know, you get a scope of the land, you get to see the restaurants, interact with the people. Well, how about we amp that up a bit? No trolleys today.
First, let's hop on a jet ski and zip around the coast with barefoot billies.
Okay, so this jet ski tour is 26 miles around the island, and we start from the Atlantic side of the ocean, and now we're in the Gulf of Mexico.
Whatever you need, whatever you want, whatever you need.
This gives you actually a point of view from outside of being on land. We can still see the same points that you're going to see on the trolley, like the southernmost point, but you're seeing it from a water aspect.
Morning love.
He just told me to go faster.
Taking me places where we
He just schooled me. We're going up to 55 miles.
morning love.
So I gotta tell you, people ask me all the time, am I afraid when I do these adventures? And I gotta say, yes, I'm always afraid, so what? One of my biggest fears is the ocean, and I've conquered that many times, but jet skiing all by myself is something that I've never done. So taking this tour was a real adventure, especially going through the harbor, going through the Key West harbor. The ships, the boats, they go through there too, so there were big wake waves, and I learned the key was to just go fast. I admit I was holding up the group a bit. I was going 35 miles per hour, but towards the end I was handling this thing like a champ. I was going up to 65 miles per hour. So today was a true adventure experience. My heart was pounding. Yes, I was praying to Jesus, but I did make it in the end. I did it!
Next, let's hop aboard a glass-bottom boat tour. Also something I've never done before. We launch at John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park, which starts off in a marshy mangrove area. But to really see the beauty under the sea, you have to go to the middle of the ocean. And boy, was it a rocky ride. Even if you have your sea legs, you may still want to pop in a motion sickness pill. The state park is about 70 nautical square miles. You can snorkel or scuba. For me, it was cool just staring down at the glass bottom.
All right, I'm at the Cheeca Lodge in Isla Morada trying to catch another sunset while I'm here in the Florida Keys, and this happens to be one of the top fishing destinations. Even the bushes like to come here.
So after a good night's rest, we head out to the famous Bud and Mary's.
So first stop on our fishing excursion is we're going bait fishing.
We're hanging around Plantation Key, Florida, right on the border of the Everglades National Park and the Florida Bay.
So this is our Captain Timmy. Tell us what we're doing today.
We're going to be snapper fishing at Cowpens Cut with some live pilchards that David just caught.
Snatch my bait quickly.
The Everglades National Park is a habitat for a number of rare and endangered species, like the manatee, crocodile, and Florida gator. Once we shift through the mangroves, then it's out to the sea.
Hold on to your head.
I quickly realized that I'm not very good at deep sea fishing, but we do find a spot for an epic photo shoot.
Birds are so antisocial. I know. God. Okay, so now that we're back, we're gonna watch Tim fillet the fish that we caught, and we're gonna have them for lunch. Thanks, my friend. Woohoo!
In Key West Mallory Square, there's a celebration of the sunset every single night because it's the sunset and it's truly spectacular. But this time, we choose to take it to the water.
So So this is the Sunset Cruise hosted by Danger Charter, and I think we're the Atlantic Ocean meets the Gulf of Mexico, and we're almost near the Caribbean.
That was a very cute travel log. I'm very pleased with that. I noticed with my stand-ups, they sounded good. It looks like I'm settling into my voice, getting more comfortable speaking to the camera in this way. And it looks like I just settled into that influencer style. I'm very proud of my shooting technique. I'm proud of the shot selection. I learned the cadence of that. And then here's a little more of the behind the scenes. I think I expressed everything there in the video, but that jet ski trip had scarred me for a while. I have not been on a jet ski since then. I had been on one earlier episode. You saw that in the California water episode and the Channel Islands. And then this was my second go. We went around that island. There were massive wake waves and I was by myself. I had not been that comfortable on water before. Basically all the water experiences I had as an adult, you've seen documented in this show from starting from the first episode with BVI. So it was a challenge and I was definitely holding up the group. I remember that also, that trauma of being the last one in and them having to wait for me and catch up. I just couldn't get myself to go as fast as you needed to go on that by myself. Anyways, I survived it, but that was just a little behind the scenes stories of why I've never been jet skiing again. Let's watch the second episode in the Florida Keys series.
If you're looking for some nightlife action on any given night, head to Duval Street. The bars are lined up from corner to corner, and the best way to see which one suits you is to bar hop. And it's so easy to fit right in with the locals. I'm headed to the most remote and littlest explored U.S. national park.
Hey guys, Davy Sutton here. Just took a seaplane from Key West to Dry Tortugas, which is about 70 miles in the Gulf of Mexico. So you can take a half-an-hour ride from Seaplane, or you can also take the ferry.
This place is loaded with vibrant coral reefs, nesting sea turtles, and unique tropical fish, but we'll get to that part later. It's time to explore. Discovered by Ponce de Leon in 1513, the Dry Tortugas were named after a large population of sea turtles living in the waters surrounding the group of tiny islands, with the centerpiece as the Civil War-era Fort Jefferson, one of the largest brick structures in the Western Hemisphere, and also later turned into one of the largest remote prisons.
The second floor of the prison cell. Ooh, very close. The cool thing is you can explore and there's no railing, so we've been given fair warning. So these are the ruins of the prison cells of Fort Jefferson, who were at one time housed up to 1,700 prisoners. And some of the most famous prisoners of this fort were the murderers of President Abraham Lincoln. So this is Dr. Mudd's cell. Have you heard of the legend of Dr. Mudd?
Dr. Samuel Mudd was the physician who repaired John Wilkes Booth's broken leg after he killed President Abraham Lincoln. He was sentenced to life at Fort Jefferson for conspiracy and harboring Booth.
So they convinced me to go to the very top, and I'm not very excited about visiting prisons usually, but I think this one's worth it. Oh, so pretty. And there's 100 square miles of territory here.
Of course, the prison is surrounded by a moat, you know, in case the prisoners planned a jailbreak or something. This is just one more obstacle. For us, not an obstacle.
Apparently there's a crocodile that is in the moat, the only crocodile, and legend has it that he came over here from Hurricane Katrina and stayed and feeds on the wildlife all to himself. Suddenly I'm all by myself, and no, I don't like being in prisons by myself. It's time to go.
After exploring the fort, it's time to hit up the beach and snorkel. Okay, maybe just the beach.
I don't want to leave the beach.
Well, what another lovely travel log. And also you could see as I'm going into the airport or aboarding the plane, it seems like I'm getting more comfortable with asking people to hold the camera for me here and there. The rest of those scenes where I am at the fort, I use the tripod if I wasn't using handheld. And then the other thing is, of course, you could still see I don't have a mic. I don't know at what point I got a mic, maybe in season 2, but still you get some of that wind feedback that I couldn't resolve in post-production. And lastly, I will say just another behind the scenes, I thoroughly enjoyed going to the Dry Tortugas and that fort and learning about the history. Of course, by now, you know that's my jam. At this point in 2015, I'm not sure if I knew that that was exactly my lane yet. I was slowly making my way there and really thriving in the places that gave me an opportunity to dig into history and culture. All right, so those are the 2 episodes. Let's see what is still open. Cheeca Lodge at Isla Morada, still open. It was heavily damaged by Hurricane Irma in September 2017. It reopened March 2018 after a $25 million renovation. Still a luxury Isla Morada resort, and recently had recognition from Condé Nast Travelers, Reader's Choice, and Southern Living. Bud and Mary's Marina in Isla Morada, still open and operating, good for them. Barefoot Billy's Key West, still operating. The Dry Tortugas National Park, still open, still only accessible by boat or seaplane. Fort Jefferson on the islands, still open for visitors. It is a national park. The seaplane we took there was Key West Seaplane Adventure, still operating as a seaplane operator to the Dry Tortugas. Active deep sea fishing charter operations, well known in Florida Keys, a fishing destination. Okay, there you have it. You've seen that being the only video journalist on a writer's press trip in 2015 taught me that being early to the format is indeed a work of labor. And now every creator entering travel video has an easier path. The gear is also easier too. Next time, we're going to the US Virgin Islands. I produced 5 episodes from one trip. A local chef, a private home dinner, a kayak across the channel, and the most unique 4th of July celebration that I've ever been to. I'll see you in the next video.